I know you want to be neutral, but you develop personal friendships with the likes of Linden, I'm sure, McLean, Jelena, who were big parts of the team and community, and see them jettisoned off to other cities.
Well, actually, I didn't get to know the players that well until they retired. Then you find out what a character Kirk McLean was.
Yeah.
I knew him as a good goaltender, and there was some communication, but I didn't socialize with the players. And you got to know some players more than others. I remember telling a reporter one time, don't talk hockey to these guys all the time. They'd ask them about their kids or their golf game or something. Loosen up a bit about that when you're communicating with the players, so you're not sounding like you're interviewing them all the time.
It was pretty interesting in those days, too. When I first started to come around, late 70s, early 80s, you had full access to the dressing room after practices, during practices, after games, before games. There was one PR guy, and he usually wasn't around. There was nobody like today. If you have to request access to players, you may or may not get the player you want to talk to. You may get him in a scrum. You'll seldom get him one-on-one. In those days, you wandered into the dressing room after practice, and I'd spend a couple of hours in there sometimes talking to guys about all sorts of different things. I was pretty close to the age of a lot of the players in those days when I first came around too. So I made some pretty good friends out of it, but it was it's just a completely different world. You found out a lot about guys, where they were from, who they were, things that you might never use on the air, but you got to know a lot about who you were dealing with on a daily basis, and more than just their name and number. There was one of the greatest guys, most misunderstood players that ever passed through Vancouver. Al Mogilny was a wonderful guy.
Real thinker.
A real thinker.
Terrific player.
A great personality that he never wanted anybody to really see, but really looked after the young guys on the team when they came in, really cared about his team. Just all of the things you would like in a great player who was a fantastic hockey player, right there at the level with Pavel Bure for a time, but completely misunderstood because he didn't want to be a public figure.
What about you, Shorty?
Well, I was racking my brain here for characters, and one without a specific story, and one that might surprise people, but I think you'd agree with me, and Jim, you'd agree, is Sammy Salo. Yeah. Sammy Salo was a funny, astute, really dry sense of humor, but he was so quiet. Nobody really got to see that side of him. I think some people would be surprised to know that Sammy Salo was the character that he was, but you know, there's been others that, I mean, Kevin Bieksa, obviously, people are more aware of.
Yeah, we missed Kevin around here.
Mark Berzeman, too, who was here for a cup of coffee, and he'd be on the plane, and when we were landing, you know, when you're supposed to be buckled in and all that, and he'd be at the back of the plane pretending he was ski jumping.
A lot of the guys who became the real characters on teams were 30-year-old plus guys who'd been around for a while, much-traveled characters like Bergie was when he was here, like Coley Campbell was when he was around. So the guys now they're younger. They really mind the way they do things. They don't want to be very open, and usually there's a PR guy hanging over their shoulder when they do an interview, so they don't want to let you know too much about them. And I don't think they feel like they can show you any of their personality because they've learned from the time they played on their first AAA team at 14 that this is the way you handle yourself, and then you have a personal coach, and then you have an agent. You have all of these things that you've learned to live the cliche life of a national hockey leaguer, and you're 22 years old, and you just don't show your character. It's not Vancouver, it's not Toronto, it's everywhere. It's the way young guys are.
I guess I better throw John Garrett in there, too, or I'll get in trouble.
Oh, yes.